Adaram say, whenever I leave the house, and on whatever thing my eyes fall صبر. Allah Ta'ala says, Wallahu yuhibbu as-sabirin. Allah Ta'ala is lief with Adikina.
School governing body of South Coast Madrasa.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace, blessings and mercy of the Almighty be with you all. I'm your host. My name is Samih Jad, and I'm hosting you during this special program speaking about the Egyptian situation. And we know that in Egypt in the past few months, there was a military coup that took place about 5 months ago and removed all the elections results which happened in Egypt. To give us a little bit more about that, we are joined in South Africa here by a delegation from the coalition anti-coup that's coming to South Africa with a special and official visit to the country, also to mourn Mr. Nelson Mandela, the leader of South Africa. And we are having them with us. Let's welcome them to our program. Dr. Abdul Mawjood Ad-Dardiri, who is a member of the Foreign Relations Committee in the legitimate Egyptian Parliament, and also the head of the delegation. Dr. Abdul Mawjood, Jazakallah khairan for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I am really honored to be in South Africa. I am honored to carry a message from President Morsi, the legitimate president of Egypt, to the family of Mr. Nelson Mandela, to the South African people, and to the president of South Africa. I am honored to emphasize the fact that between Egypt and South Africa, there is a strong bond and relationship to the struggle for freedom, justice, equality, human rights, and the rule of law. I am very happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Jazakallah khairan. Also, we are joined by Dr. Muna Al-Qazzaz, who is also a spokeswoman of Muslim Brotherhood office in London. Dr. Muna, Jazakallah khairan, and welcome to South Africa.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan. All right, in the beginning, perhaps maybe our viewers would like to know a little bit more about the purpose of the visit to South Africa. Dr. Abdul Mawjood Ad-Dardiri, can you just tell us a little bit more about the purpose of your visit to this country?
The visit has three objectives. So we, as the rest of the people, were shocked due to the passing away of a great man who is not only great for people of South Africa, but great to the all Africa, and in fact to the rest of the world. A man whose life and journey with the people of Africa embodied this struggle, this honorable struggle for human rights, for rule of law, for equality, for inclusivity, for willingness to work together not only for people of Africa, but for the rest of the people. We are here specifically to pay our respect as a delegation from Egypt, Egyptians inside and Egyptians outside, representing the legitimate government of Egypt and the legitimate movement of the people in Egypt. We are here also to strengthen the relationship between the NGOs inside South Africa and the NGOs in Egypt. We were very happy with the people we met from ANC and from other groups as well. Their willingness and their strong stand against the coup. Until today, South Africa, as so many other countries did not, and we were promised they will not recognize the military coup. And that's a very strong stand. We honor it, and I believe South Africa should take that stand.
Yes.
For 300 years, they've been living under racism, oppression, and they know what it means to live under oppression. They lived it through. So that's why their stand is very telling to the rest of the world. I know that the coup government, the military coup, the bloody coup, is trying to put as much pressure as they can from different parts. But South African leadership, as well as South African people, will never submit to the pressure that is coming from outside of the world. The last objective, we would like to bring good news to the people of South Africa. If Nelson Mandela as a person passed away, I would like to tell the people of South Africa, to the people of Africa, and to the people in the rest of the world, that the new Mandela is being in Egypt now, is Egyptian Mandela. Dr. Morsi, who was elected by the Egyptian people, is kidnapped, put in prison by the military junta. The constitution was suspended and the parliament was dissolved. These crimes against humanity, against democracy, against the rule of law in Egypt. Not only that, they committed so many crimes against the Egyptian. First time in Egyptian history, you find an Egyptian army killing Egyptian people. Thousands of people got killed in the streets of Egypt, and they're putting thousands of people in jail. And that's why we would like to make this clear to the people of South Africa, make them know. When we spoke yesterday in an NGO meeting, people are very supportive to the struggle of Egyptians, and they're willing to stand with the Egyptian all the way.
We can see also that you are putting the badge of Nelson Mandela there on your shoulder. And perhaps you can tell us more about how Nelson Mandela is, how is he representing to the Egyptian people?
Yeah, but this has really story. I was speaking to an NGO meeting, and a young man who looks for me young, but when I asked about his age, he was 70 years of age. He participated in the struggle of South Africa. He asked an exchange. He said, can I take, he asked me, what does this Rab'a sign mean? Yes. The Rab'a sign, Rab'a is the name of a woman where there was a mosque by her name, and there was a square in front of it. Egyptians who stood against the military coup gathered around the square. The military junta killed thousands, in 9 hours, killed thousands of Egyptian protesters, burned the field hospitals, even killed wounded Egyptians. That's a crime against humanity.
In that place of Rab'a.
In that place of Rab'a. That's why we're planning to commemorate this, and we call upon the rest of the world to commemorate. So when he came and asked me, what is this? I told him the story. He asked me, can we exchange? Can I take Rab'a and you take this? I kept it, and I put another pin of Rab'a. I love Rab'a the same as I love Mandela. Both Mandela and Rab'a embody this struggle, this willingness to sacrifice peacefully for the sake of democracy, yes, human rights, and rule of law.
So in other words, Rab'a, that sign which many people now are putting in the T-shirts and carrying with them, we know the story of Rab'a, which is a sign of perseverance, a sign of the steadfastness of the people who were gathered in Rab'a Square in Egypt, and they were massacred by the military junta. All right, if I may direct my second question to Dr. Muna Al-Qazzaz, and asking you to give us a little bit of background about what happened in Egypt exactly since the revolution of January 2011. What happened since that time up till today? Just give us a summary of what happened there.
Egypt lived under dictatorship, under corruption for decades and decades. For 60 years we've suffered from military dictatorship, and then comes in this beacon of hope, the revolution of the 25th of January 2011. People told us the youth cannot do it, but we could actually get a better future for ourselves and for our families. We were able to topple a dictator, and we wanted to topple him and topple a regime that our parents and ancestors have suffered from their corruption. We went out on the square, in all squares of Egypt, protesting, asking for our freedom, for our dignity, for our human rights. A very similar struggle to the one you have here in South Africa. My brother, for example, he's only 32. He went out on the square and stood there steadfastly, and then we toppled the dictator. We were so happy, there was so much hope. Finally, we will be able to choose our first president of Egypt. And there were 13 different candidates, 13 different presidents. Obviously, I'm jumping through history, a history of 3 years. We had the parliamentary elections, we had the referendum on a roadmap, and every time there is hope. Every time people queue for the first time, 55 million people went out on the streets to vote for the first time. I believe that South Africans have the same feeling in the early 1990s when they stood for the first time to cast their first vote. It feels human, like Mandela said. It feels alive and free. And then my brother chose. My brother is an example of thousands of young people like me and yourself, and every African and human being wanting hope. He went out there on the square, he protested, and then there was a roadmap, and then he participated in a presidential campaign, and his presidential candidate won. He's the first democratically elected president of Egypt, is President Morsi. First time in the modern history of Egypt to have a democratically elected president. My brother was in his team, and he was one of the few people who actually went to the presidential palace with him. Jumping through a year of presidency, obviously it's very difficult to change a system that is ingrained in corruption for 6 decades. And that is what Mandela said at the end of his book, A Long Way to Freedom. Because obviously voting a president is a first step, but there's still a long way to become free as people. So a very long first year, very hard work. And then what happened? A military coup. A military coup that kidnapped the president, kidnapped my brother, and kidnapped other presidential aides. What did my brother do? My brother was only a civil servant in the presidential palace. He was only a civil servant. He was not a politician. What happened to my brother now? I do not know. For 165 days, we don't know where my brother is. He has 4 little children. His youngest is 9 months old. Actually, he named his daughter Tahrir, because Tahrir is the symbol of the 2011 revolution, and he thought that Tahrir symbolizes every good thing, hope and human dignity, which is Tahrir. Actually, a South African friend of his named his daughter Liberation after Mandela was freed, and so he took the idea of naming his daughter Tahrir after his South African friend. This is what the situation now Egypt is in, as Dr. Dadiri has mentioned. We are facing severe clamp down on human rights, on democracy. For 5 rounds of elections, all our votes were taken away from us. Now, it's not only my brother in prison. We're talking about over 20,000 people. The numbers are not clear, obviously, but over 20,000 people are kidnapped and arrested. There's arbitrary arrests. Over 6,000 people were killed. I've lost many of my friends just calling for equality, dignity, democracy, and human rights.
We can also say that the people who took part in the revolution of Jan 25, they are now detained or killed, massacred, or being sent to prison, while the people whom the revolution was against them, they're now freed. When we heard that Mubarak, I believe he's now free now.
So 3 decades of Mubarak's corruption is not enough by these kangaroo courts to keep him detained, whereas 1 year of reform and hope of democracy in Egypt is enough to kidnap the first elected president in the history of Egypt.
Not only the first elected president, but even
what he
thousands of people.
Whoever stands for him, whoever stands up for democracy and their votes is
yes, that's
detained.
true. Very sad situation indeed. Let me move forward and ask Dr. Dadiri about the special message which you came today to deliver to the family of Mandela. What is there exactly in this message?
The message is very personal on one level, because it is a message from President Morsi to the family of President Mandela. It is a political message to the leadership of South Africa, thanking them for their stand against the coup and for steadfasting and willingness not to recognize the coup, the bloody coup, and to move forward towards the struggle for more freedom, more economic opportunities for the people of South Africa and the people in Egypt. And it has an international message too, because it is saying to the world that Egypt is an African, South Africa is an African. The African people have decided to live free, to fight all forms of corruption, to work together for human rights, rule of law, and democracy. And that is the message in the 3 different levels it has. And we're really honored to have had the chance to have the messages delivered. And we are looking forward to build more positive relations between the people of Egypt and the people of South Africa. And that is, by the way, very different from the years of Mubarak. Mubarak was not very much interested in Africa. For him, Africa was like the back door. He didn't pay that much attention. For us as Egyptians, I live in the south of Egypt. I come from Luxor. Africa's closer to me than Cairo. So I'm very much interested. In fact, one of the projects that I was working on is establishing an African university on the borders of Egypt, so that we have to get to know Africa. At the same time, we need to get to know more about Europe and about the rest of the world. We're central, and we would like to develop relationship with everyone, starting with the African circle, the Arab circle, the Muslim circle, and the international circle.
In fact, this was the point of my next question, is that what is the vision of the Freedom and Justice Party as a ruling party, if we may say, to the relations between Egypt and Africa? And we know, especially when we know that during Mubarak time there was corruptions in these relations. It was corrupted, and Mubarak, let's say, broke these relations with Africa. And during Morsi time, it was better. So what is the vision of the Freedom and Justice Party to the African relations?
When Egyptians moved to the streets on January 25th, they had 4 objectives: economic prosperity, freedom, social justice, and human dignity. Any foreign policy or foreign relation usually represents the internal relations. And when I ran for office, for the parliament, I had this in mind, that I wanted to reflect the internal policy in the external relation. That's why I joined the Foreign Relations Committee in the Egyptian parliament. I was so happy to be able at the end to serve the Egyptian people and take their internal message to the outside world. I was sent as the head of a delegation to Washington, D.C. early on after my election as a member of the parliament. And the President Morsi at that time, he was the head of the Freedom and Justice Party. And he gave me a specific message to America, that we would like to develop better relations based on mutual understanding, mutual respect, and mutual interest. And at that time, it was very important for America, and for Europe, and for the rest of the world to understand that Egypt has changed. Egypt is not a one-man show. Egypt is not a dictatorship anymore. The Egyptian president does not make decisions on his own. He has to reflect and represent the will of the Egyptian people, who are the ones who elected him and put him in office. I am so honored to be elected by the Egyptian people. I am a servant to the Egyptian people. I will serve them the rest of my life, to my people in Luxor, to my people in everywhere in Egypt. I will continue serving them. So the foreign relations wanted it to be very clearly reflecting the internal relations. So we started visiting so many countries in the world, saying there is a new Egypt now. There is a new spirit. And I always summarize it as this. Egyptians, when they went on the streets on January 25th, they declared the end of colonial mentality. A colonized mentality is disastrous. The end of inferiority complex. We wanted at the end to say, hey, we are equal. We're equal human beings. We're equal citizens. We would like to sit together as equal human beings. I would like to call upon the rest of the world is to get rid of the superiority complex. Please don't look down at us. We are human beings. We're like the people of South Africa. We're human beings. We're equal to the rest of the world. And we would like to continue. We insist on this equality, and we should be respected. And that's why I was so happy to participate not only in the revolution, but also in the parliament on this capacity. Yes. So the external relation, to put it in a summary, has to reflect the internal relation based on mutual understanding, mutual respect, and mutual interest.
Jazakallah khairan for giving us this beneficial information about the situation of Egypt. And to our viewers, just to remind you that we are having a special program, a special interview with the delegation from the coalition anti-coup in Egypt. We'll go for a very short break, inshallah, and when we come back, we shall continue. Don't go away.
تنالوا جنة ونعيما صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما حتى تنالوا جنة ونعيما صلوا عليه.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our program, our special program about the situation in Egypt. And just to remind you that we are joined by a delegation, an official delegation from the coalition anti-coup in Egypt, Dr. Dardiri and Dr. Muna Al-Qazzaz, who are members of this delegation. Back to our guests and asking them some more questions, speaking about the African relations and South Africa. We know that didn't recognize the military coup. What do you expect from South Africa? What is Egypt expecting from South Africa in the coming more decisions or more days?
We expect a lot from South Africa. We look at South Africa as a model, and we look to Mr. Mandela as a real model for democracy, for a struggle for freedom, for social justice, and for economic prosperity. So South Africa represents a very positive model for Egyptian struggle. On many levels, we expect South Africa to support the struggle of Egyptians on the political level, on the international level, on the African Union level. Is very important. The stand of South Africa is crucial to the people of Egypt in their struggle towards freedom. We expect also South Africa on the international level to raise the voice against the military coup, against the bloody coup, against the killings of Egyptians on the United Nations level, on any platform that the South Africa can do. On the social level, I expect a lot of cooperation between the NGOs of South Africa and the NGOs in Egypt. We expect more media support, more media coverage about the struggle that is going on in Egypt now. There can be many things that we can do together with South Africa. And Egypt and South Africa, both of them are in Africa. And it is very important when they join hands, they can have a very positive impact on the people of Africa.
My next question is directed to Dr. Muna Al-Qazzaz, and we know, and many people saw even in the TVs, that there were many crimes committed in Rabaa. If you can tell us more about the crimes of the military junta since the coup took place. Different crimes we're speaking here, not only speaking about the killing, but we're talking also about in terms of media, in terms of detaining the youth. What can you tell us about that?
The moment the coup was orchestrated, crimes against humanity were committed. I was one of the first people to face it by the kidnap of my brother, the president, and the presidential team. They shut all Islamic TV outlets, and all the opposition, any voice that would oppose the coup was shut on TV and on radio, and also in print. They also detained some of the political leaders of the Freedom and Justice Party and also of Al-Wasat Party and many parties, and they called their arrests as necessary measures. So violations against humanity was done in 2013, and the whole world was watching and witnessing that. Looking also 5 days after the coup, a first massacre was committed in front of the Republican Guards where the president was kept. And you're talking about over 50 people were killed over there. 10 days down the line, another massacre was committed. And then on August 14th was the worst massacre in the modern history of Egypt. Over 3,000 people, young men and women, were killed. I remember the face of my 17-year-old friend, Asma al-Biltagi, who was a very good revolutionary, mashallah, and she was just killed for no reason, but she went out there calling for her freedom and calling for her democratic rights back. I have a friend who lost her husband and brother on the same day. I have many friends. I've lost my Islamic teacher. I cannot count the number of people who have lost their loved ones on this day, on this particular massacre. But this didn't stop. It actually continued and continued. And now, I think everyone have seen the girls who were, the 21 girls from Alexandria who were sentenced by a military court for just having the signs of Rabaa. So they went out on a peaceful protests. Seven of them were minors. They're under 18. They just went out protesting, projecting, just expressing their opinion as free citizens, and they were arrested and sentenced for 11 years. So we're looking, and not a single city of Egypt does not have women kidnapped and kept in prisons under difficult conditions. We're also seeing very difficult xenophobia. So there are Syrian refugees, may Allah protect Syria and its people. There are Syrian refugees in Egypt that are kept in prisons, and they're facing very difficult conditions in the prisons. The Rafah border with Palestine is shut, and the Palestinians are suffering because of the shortage of power and fuel going into Gaza. So we're looking at a humanitarian crisis that may perhaps extend throughout the North Africa region and throughout the Middle East and throughout the world. It is not the 1960s like the Nasser time where he can kill people and the world cannot know about it. It is 2013 and massacres are happening in Egypt and the world are turning a blind eye towards it. Actually, I reaffirm what Dr. Dajiri has been saying. The African Union did not hesitate in announcing what happened in Egypt as a coup and suspending Egypt's seat in the African Union, whereas the European Union did not really announce it as a coup and did not uphold its democratic principles. Actually, I'm very, very proud to be an African and a member of the African Union and Africa that really understands the value of democracy, and democracy is the only way out for us as Africans: democracy, equality, justice, and human rights.
Mm-hmm. Due to the extensive and intensive propaganda of the coup media, some people have that misconception that Muslim Brotherhood were a ruling party while they didn't actually form the government. But let's just take it from that side, that the Muslim Brotherhood as the party from which was the president, some people say that, you know what, you were not successful in attracting all the other parties in working together or in crossing that time or that period of time in the Egyptian history. How do you respond to that? How do you respond to those people who say that you were not successful in making one unity between all the Egyptians, and they say that this is the reason why the coup took place?
Madiba is an excellent example of reconciliation. After 27 years of imprisonment, he still was able to reconcile a country. We were actually walking on the path of Madiba. South Africa was very supportive to the Egyptians post the revolution in 2011, helping us to write a constitution that we can reconcile together and work together as Egyptians, building a new nation, a new hope for Africa and for the entire world. However, what happened is there are oppositions that played as game spoilers. President Morsi over a year called for talks for over 20 times, and every time the opposition would refuse to come to speak, to have proper negotiation and come for reconciliation. However, they failed at 5 democratic rounds, and now how did they come back? They came back because they failed at democracy. They came back as leaders on the back of tanks. This is what the opposition has done. This is what the so-called secular, liberal opposition has done. It doesn't really matter whether the person is an Islamist or whatever label people want to give to justify killing of human beings. Those are human beings being slaughtered, and it's a human nature for people to stand against oppression and against killing of their fellow countrymen.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Dardiri, some people, we know obviously that there were some countries, they did not recognize, they recognized the coup, while majority of the world countries did not recognize the military coup which happening in Egypt. But some of these countries which already recognize the military coup is making some treaties with Egypt now, with the Egyptian government or the government of the coup, if you may say, and they are maybe investing there in the Suez Canal and doing some giving some donations to the coup government. How do you think will be the treatment of the coming government if we say that, inshallah, the coup fall down? Will you recognize these treaties? How you will deal with these treaties?
Let us make sure that there is a fact that those regional powers that supported the coup are all non-democratic. Mm-hmm. They do not value human rights. In some of those countries, women cannot drive cars. They're committing crimes against their own people. Mm-hmm. And shame.
Most of these countries are Arabian countries,
yes.
We say, yes.
And shame on those Gulf countries who pay money to have Egyptians killed. Egyptians will not forgive this. This will live in the memory of Egyptians for decades to come. And any country, we made it very clear that any country recognizes the bloody coup It is illegitimate from an Egyptian perspective. The ruling party, the party that represented the majority of the Egyptian people, is the only legitimate government that can have treaties with the outside world. The Shura Council, during Rab'a days, made a ruling that any treaty with the outside world, with this coup government, is not going to be recognized by. So we make this very clear during those days. And I insist, and I call upon those countries to rethink of their policies, that people of Egypt are not going to forget it easily, that one day, one country paid billions of dollars to have Egyptians killed in the streets of Egypt. That's a crime. We do consider this as a crime, and those who perpetuated this crime are going to be brought to justice, and they have to be put on trial. We want fairness, and we want democracy. Our principle is to have a democratic process. In a democracy, you have different voices. And the good thing about democracy, it manages the conflicting voices. We always prefer a consensus. And President Morsi and the Freedom and Justice Party worked hard to create this national consensus. In fact, we didn't have a Freedom and Justice Party government, we had a national unity government. And we wanted to do the best, but the struggle in Egypt was between the old regime and the new regime. The new regime did not have lots of powers. The old regime, yes, the head of the regime came down, but the rest, the forces of the old regime were still there. We're talking about elite, corrupt elite of the military, same of the police, same of the judiciary, same of the state bureaucracy, and of course the media. And of course the business community, the corrupt leaders in the business community. They all aligned themselves together with the opposition that failed to gain more than 20% of the votes. And that is the struggle in Egypt. Egyptians, let me make this very clear. Egyptians are determined to go all the way until democracy is back, until the coup is broken, and until we continue working on completing the democratic process in Egypt.
So we know now that the coup forces, they are trying now to make a referendum in a new constitution. And perhaps maybe in the middle of this coming month, there will be a referendum. They're trying to give some more legitimacy to themselves. How is the coalition anti-coup will deal with this situation?
Our stand as the majority of the Egyptian people is this: an illegitimate coup government is not recognized, will not be recognized by the majority of the Egyptian people. Imposing a constitution does not give them legality. Mm-hmm. So whatever they do, they will try to get illegality even by killing people. And that is not legality. That is illegality. These are crimes. They cannot. Look at what the military did. It kidnapped the president and put the president in jail, dissolved the National Assembly, the parliament, the upper house of the parliament, and suspended the constitution, killed thousands and imprisoned thousands. These crimes does not justify, does not give them any form of legitimacy. Now they're talking about the constitution. Our position is we will boycott this constitution, and we call upon all Egyptians to boycott it, because those who support such a constitution without bringing those who killed the Egyptians to trial are having blood of Egyptians on their hands. And I call upon honorable Egyptians everywhere, men and women, here in South Africa or anywhere in the world, Muslims and the Christians, not to support an illegitimate constitution that justifies the killing of Egyptians. That's a crime against Egyptians and should not be accepted.
But somebody might say that if you're going to boycott the constitution, then obviously there are people who are supporting the coup. They will go and they'll take part in that referendum. So don't you think that by them going to the referendum, some people of some sector of the Egyptians going to the referendum and voting for it, and perhaps the result will be 90% of the people who went for voting, they accepted the constitution? This won't give them any legitimacy from your point of view.
No, not at all, because legitimacy comes when there is freedom of movement, freedom of expression, when there is freedom of assembly. You cannot put thousands in jail, especially elected members of parliament. You put them in jail and then you call it freedom. You cannot shut down TV channels and then you call it freedom. You cannot even have a discussion with the people of Egypt about their constitution. This is not the committee of 50 people's constitution. This is supposed to be the constitution. You know what we did when we were discussing the constitution that was approved by 64%? We went to every village. We went to every corner in the country, presenting the constitution and listening and taking feedback from the people of Egypt. And this is how we reached that understanding. Even the committee that was working on the 2012 constitution was elected by the parliament. And that makes a big difference. Now the coup government, the bloody military coup, is trying to get some legitimacy. It's trying to send a message to the world that, hey, the Egyptian people decided. The Egyptian people are not free to make a decision. And when you subjugate people, you cannot ask for their opinions. When young Egyptian boys and girls carry something like this and they're taken to jail, that is not freedom. That's slavery. This oppression has no meaning. It's useless. We do not consider it as a constitution. We will consider it as a form of slavery oppression, and we will work hard until democracy is back, until the coup is broken, until we work together. And I call here upon the people of Egypt, anywhere, whether you like Morsi or you don't like him, you voted for Morsi or you didn't vote for him. I myself was in Tahrir Square on June 30th. I support people's right to move to the street and oppose an elected president. It is your right, my brothers and my sisters. But it is not anyone's right to kill Egyptians. That's what troubles me most. To kill an Egyptian for just thinking differently, for just holding different perspective, that is not. Please, for the sake of Egypt, we are all Egyptians. Let us stand together against killing of any Egyptian, because this is the way we go. We need to protect one another. We need to be able to work one another. And this is my message in relationship to the Constitution. The Constitution is null and void because there is no freedom in Egypt. It cannot be accepted as the Constitution of Egyptians.
Indeed, indeed. Jazakallah khairan, Doctor, for this wonderful information. Dear viewers, we will be going, inshallah, for a very short break. And after that, we shall continue with our program. Don't go away.
صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما حتى تنالوا جنة ونعيما صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما حتى تنالوا جنة ونعيما صلوا عليه.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to this special program about the situation in Egypt. Just to remind you, we are having with us in the studios of ITV a delegation, an official delegation from Egypt, anti-coup, Egyptians anti-coup, and they are visiting South Africa to deliver some message to the family of Nelson Mandela and also to all South Africans. Once again, we will be directing some questions to our guests who are with us here in the studios. And my next question is for Dr. Muna Al-Qazzaz, who is the spokeswoman of Muslim Brotherhood office in London. If you can tell us about the youth movement now in Egypt. Now we can see that there's rallies everywhere in Cairo, everywhere in the township, everywhere in the different provinces of Egypt, and joined also by the students taking part in that, if we may say, this is a continuation of the revolution of January 25. Can you tell us more about how is the youth doing in this revolution?
As I mentioned earlier, Brother Samah, the youth are the backbone of the revolution. The youth, particularly of universities, are the backbone of the movement that is resisting the oppression that is happening in Egypt, are the backbone of this revolution against the Mubarak regime initially in 2011 and the remnants of Mubarak regime now. The youth on the streets now will not allow a constitution that gives impunity to their killers, to the killer of their friends, to the ones who imprisoned them. They will go away with impunity without any punishment if this constitution passes. And the youth are defiant and determined to peacefully resist this constitution and to peacefully resist this coup government and this coup regime and this criminal regime that did not only take away their friends and loved ones, it also is taking away their hope. The youth are the center of any resistant movement. The unique thing about this revolution, this movement, is it is inherently peaceful. The killers, the criminals of the criminal coup, of the security forces, are shooting us. And we remain defiant, peacefully, and we did not even uphold our right, our legitimate right of self-defense. The youth, the numbers are increasing. The situation in Egypt is becoming unbearable. As a young woman, as an Egyptian young woman, as an African young woman, I do not want to live in a country that imprisons me just for holding an opinion that opposes the regime. If I oppose this constitution, I'll be imprisoned. If I say I want Morsi to be my president, I will be imprisoned. Similar as my brother who is imprisoned. Actually, because I'm very vocal about the situation in Egypt, they arrested my dad in Egypt, a 70-year-old man who has heart problems. Because I am vocal against them, they couldn't get me, but they got my dad. Mm-hmm. And this is the situation.
And they got your brother as well?
They got my dad, my brother, my cousins. They're taking anyone. And they've taken my family wealth. So this is the situation in Egypt. Maybe the media is turning a blind eye to the current situation in Egypt now, but there are hundreds of thousands and millions of Egyptians, not only in Cairo, but in every province of Egypt. Egyptians don't want to live under an occupation by a military regime, a military personnel or security forces holding a gun barrel to our heads. We want to be free and we want to live as we want to live. We don't want anyone to dictate us how to live.
Inshallah. Speaking about women, the women of Egypt, I can see from following up with the news that they are taking part in the rallies. They are playing very vital role in the Egyptian revolution, which is taking place right now. Can you give us a little bit more about the Egyptian women role in this revolution?
With over 20,000 people imprisoned, we're talking about women now are holding the responsibilities of looking after families, and as well as continuing the resistance that their families and fathers and brothers were on the streets fighting for. Women have always been in the forefront of any youth movements, because it's not about women's rights now, it is about basic human rights now. Women, men, children, old men, youth, everyone is asking for their democracy in Egypt, and I will make sure that the voices of young women like myself and men is heard worldwide.
If there are Egyptians who are listening to us, what do you want from the Egyptian youth? What is your expectation that you wanted from the Egyptian youth?
I think the young men and women in Egypt have already recognized what they want. What we want is to live freely. We want to be free. We don't want anyone to dictate how our future is going to be or the future of our kids is going to be. We want to live as free, honorable citizens of Egypt and of Africa and of the world. The message I want to direct to them is that stay peaceful, stay defiant, and we will win. Sisi, how old is he? He's going to die eventually and he's going to meet his Lord. We are going to live, inshallah, until he pays for his crime in this life and in the life after.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. And I may direct one of the final question actually before we wrap up our program to Dr. Dardiri. Some people and some Muslims and even non-Muslims are asking about, where's the President Morsi? He's jailed now, the elected president is jailed. We don't know, if you know any information about his situation? Where is he? How is his condition? Is he patient or is he exposed to torture maybe to resign, or what is the situation there?
President Morsi is the first democratically elected and kidnapped president in Egypt. He's taken as a hostage by the military coup. President Morsi is a man of a strong will. He was offered a palace anywhere in the world to remain silent. And he made it very clear to the junta, I do not betray my people. And I say to President Morsi, we will never betray you. President Morsi is a strong man. And that, I think he is the man of that moment in the history of the Egyptians. He is determined to remain. In fact, when he appeared in the court, he appeared very presidential. After months of disappearance and being away from the world. But when he appeared very presidential. He told the judge, You have to listen to what I say because I am the president of the country. Not only that, he told the judge, you need to let me free because you're obstructing me. And those who are kidnapping me are going to be put on trial. When he was offered an alternative, a solution, but it is 50-50 solution. It's a solution that provides 50% of freedom. But we understand in the world that there is either full freedom or no freedom, that there is justice or no justice. He made it very clear that President Morsi will not be part of any solution until the criminals who killed the Egyptian are put on trial. We want fair trial, even for the killers of innocent Egyptians. We want fair trial because we want fairness. So President Morsi is not anymore the person whose name is Mohammed Morsi. He's representing a phenomenon similar to that of Mandela. In fact, many Egyptians call him Mandela of Egypt, and many Arabs call him Mandela of the Arab world. President Morsi will continue to be that phenomenon, and that is what's making Egyptians are determined to continue in their course to bring freedom, justice, democracy, and human rights for everyone. Everyone, and I mean everyone, Muslims and Christians, men and women, young and old, because we in Egypt, we do not these differentiations are either media made or they're made by the junta, by the elite, so that they can divide Muslims and Christians. And I would like to tell my Christian brothers and sisters in Egypt that remember, we're one family. It's called the Egyptian family. Please do not support the coup, because supporting the coup means supporting the killers of Egypt. Do not participate in the coming a constitutional referendum, because that constitution is not giving us our right, is not bringing the killers to trial. And we need to work together so that we can continue together, build a new Egypt, a democratic Egypt for us, for you, and for everyone else.
Inshallah, inshallah. All the best, inshallah, for Egypt and for the future of Egyptians. And we may ask you for final remarks and message to give to our viewers, South African people. What do you say?
I have a couple of messages. I would like to emphasize the fact that I'm really honored to carry a message from President Morsi, who is in jail now, to the family of Mandela and to the family of South Africa and to the leadership of the ANC. I would like to thank the people, all the people that I met, and I may be visiting South Africa again at the end of January. I'll be happy to meet more people and discuss more cooperation between South Africa and the Egyptian people. I look for a wonderful future. I'm very optimistic about the future of South Africa and the future of Egypt. We can do it together. Egypt and South Africa need to work, need to lead Africa and the rest in the so-called third world to provide better alternatives for democracy, human rights, rule of law, and human rights.
Jazakallah khairan, Dr. Abdul Mawjood Ad-Dardiri, for giving us this wonderful and blessing and bountiful information about the situation in Egypt. And also we thank Dr. Muna Al-Qazzaz, the spokeswoman of Muslim Brotherhood office in London. Jazakumullah khairan for being with us in the program. And we wish that, inshallah, you travel safe to where you come from, inshallah.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, Jazakumullah khairan for listening to this program, for this special program about the Egyptian situation. Don't forget, من لم يهتم لأمر المسلمين فليس منهم. This person who is not concerned about the matters of others, he will not be a good person, he will not be among the Muslim Ummah. So we need to, the least is to make dua for the people of Egypt, the people of Syria, the oppressed people, wherever they may be in the entire world. Jazakumullah khairan for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما حتى تنالوا جنة ونعيما. 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 صلوا عليه